Hi everybody. I wanted to take just a few minutes to talk a little bit about some of the differences between high school and college. And you may have noticed some of these differences now that we've made it part of the way through this summer semester. Before I even get started, I wanted to show you that I'm going to be using a Venn diagram as a way of visually organizing the information. A Venn diagram is an excellent visual organizer that allows you to compare and contrast ideas. So the information that you put in the middle where the two circles overlap are common to both things that you're comparing and contrasting. And then the things that fall outside of that middle are unique to those two topics. So for example, I'm talking about textbooks. So textbooks in high school and college are typically, you'll find them there. You'll find them both for high school and for college. But that's really where the similarities end. So for high school, books are available in school, but you can't really take them home. They're oftentimes old. They've been used by many classes over many years. And because of that, because they need to be used over and over again, they don't belong to you and you can't write in them. Sometimes in high school, you spend class time actually reading the books or exploring chapter review questions and activities within the books. Also, you're tested directly on what you read in your textbook. You're tested for rote memorization of things that you find in the textbook. College is different. So for college, you guys already know that you've had to purchase your textbooks, and they can be very, very expensive. Little to no class time is devoted to reading a textbook. And so that's really, it's up to you to read your textbook on your own at home. You're required to read much more in college, and some of the material is more challenging and more dense. So you really have to set aside enough time to get that reading done. And you are responsible for comprehending the textbook on your own and for synthesizing that material. Your instructor isn't necessarily going to do that for you in the class. So with schedules, students have to attend scheduled courses for both high school and college. But again, that's really where the similarities end. For high school, you have a block schedule and you're in school pretty much all day. Your schedule is designed for you. So you'll get at the beginning of the year, you'll be told what your schedule is, what your classes are, and what times you have to be in those classes. You have little to no flexibility and freedom in choosing the classes for yourself. They're really chosen for you by your high school counselors and even your parents sometimes get involved with that process. And then finally, your life works around your school schedule. When you're in school, we know that your family, your jobs, they all know that you have to be in school. And so that time is designated for that. College is different. So with college, you make your own schedule. And so because of that, there's a lot of flexibility in designing your own schedule for yourself. There's also lots of room for error. So you want to make sure that when you're designing your schedule, you're working with an advisor to make sure that you're not making mistakes. And so you can certainly reach out to your advisor if you have questions about the schedule that you've designed for yourself, and you just want to have a second set of eyes to look at it. You aren't typically in your classes all day when you're in college, but you have more work to do outside of class. You guys probably remember I've talked again and again about that 2-to-1 rule. So you're in class for a shorter period of time, but you have to spend more time outside of class doing the studying and the reading that you would have maybe gotten otherwise when you were in high school. Finally, you have to figure out how to fit your school schedule into your life. And a lot of times, community college students in particular are juggling a lot of responsibilities and obligations outside of school, including family, work, and other commitments. So creating a schedule that works with all of those, it's like putting together a puzzle, and it can be pretty complicated, and you want to make sure that you're designing a schedule for yourself that will allow you to be successful in your college classes. There are differences for teachers and instructors as well. So for both college and high school, of course you're going to have a designated teacher or instructor for each subject. Also, your teachers and your instructors, they both care about you and your learning. However, they tend to show it in different ways. In high school, teachers are trained and hold a teaching license, and that frequently also includes them having to take continuing education courses so that they can stay on top of the knowledge of how to effectively teach their students and manage classrooms. Teachers are much more willing to work with students to make up work and stay on track in their classes, and that could include extra credit and other opportunities. Also, teachers are more likely to reach out to you or to your parents if they see that you're struggling in class. There's a much broader safety net in high school than there is in college, and the instruction, or I should say the teaching, is more on the shoulders of the teacher than the student. So compare that to college. So in college, instructors and professors are experts in their subject area, and sometimes they're really passionate about that particular subject. However, they typically don't go through any kind of teacher training, and so that can impact the way that they put presentations together and how they teach the class. They expect you to reach out to them if you are having trouble. They won't necessarily reach out to you if they notice that you're struggling in class. Also, they are not actually allowed to let your parents know if you're having trouble. At the college level, you are protected by a law called the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. And that law prevents any college staff or instructor to reach out to any third party to let them know about what's going on with you and your classes. And that means that we can't disclose that information. So if your parents were to call me and ask you how you're doing in my class, I can't share that information with them. It's really on your shoulders to stay on top of the work and know what your grades are in the class and be in charge of your own learning when you're in college. And that also goes into this last point, which is that the onus is really on you to develop that relationship and that rapport with your instructor. Instructors are certainly interested in seeing you succeed in your classes, but if you turn invisible and don't reach out to them to make that connection with them, they're much less invested in helping you if you get into a point where you really need some additional assistance. So take the time to develop that relationship and let them know who you are. There are differences in how students are tested as well. So for both high school and college, tests are used to assess your knowledge of the subject. In high school, you have lots of tests, including standardized tests. Tests typically aren't worth much of the overall grade for the class, and there may be other ways or other things that you're being graded on, such as assignments, participation, things like that. Your teacher will do a lot of test review and may even provide you with a study guide. Finally, tests are designed to show how well you can recite what you learned through class lessons and reading. How well did you get that information from what you read in the chapters? College is pretty different. So in college, there aren't as many tests. Because of that, tests cover much more content. So you are responsible for learning much more information in a shorter amount of time. Tests aren't standardized, so that means that your instructors can be making up the tests. So even between different classes, there may be different tests depending on the instructors for those classes. Often, tests are worth a larger percentage of your overall grade, and that's typically because there aren't as many tests that you'll be taking throughout the semester. Often, there is little to no in-class preparation for tests, and most of the time, instructors don't give students any kind of study guide. Really, they put much more of the responsibility on you to learn the information and know what you're studying for and to get it. Often, there's little to no opportunity to make up missed tests. So, for example, if you're sick or something comes up and you have to miss test on that day, if you didn't let the instructor know in advance, often they're not as forgiving as high school teachers. So you want to be aware of when your test days are and make sure not to miss those days. And then finally, and this last point is particularly interesting when compared to high school, tests are designed to show how well you can apply the new information versus how well you can recreate that information or recite that information. So because of that, the tests can be much harder. The questions will be harder even on things like multiple choice tests. There are lots of differences in how grades are used in high school versus college as well. So the similarities are that both high school and college use grades to assess student performance. Also, poor grades can have long-term consequences. So for high school, students are graded on numerous different assessments. So assignments, tests, group projects, participation, all those different kinds of things. Your instructor is more likely to reach out to you when they see that your grades are slipping. And they may also, as I mentioned before, reach out to your parents to let them know that there's something going on. They do give you more opportunities for extra credit so that you can recover from a bad grade. In college, that isn't always the case. So in college, often only a handful of assessments are used to determine a grade in a course. So there might just be a midterm and a final exam. Because of that, there's a higher stake for those individual grades. Instructors aren't always likely to post in-progress grades, so you won't get a midterm grade for most of your classes. It's up to you to know how you're doing in those classes and to reach out to your instructor for that information if they aren't sharing it with you regularly. Your instructor expects you to reach out to them if you need help. And they may be able to provide you with some additional resources, but they aren't always going to volunteer that information for students. And then finally, there are fewer opportunities to recover from a bad grade. Many classes don't offer any kind of extra credit, and if they see that you haven't been turning in your work, or if you've done badly on more than one assignment, they may just recommend that you drop the class. So I want to leave you with 2 questions to think about with this high school versus college business. What similarities and differences have you noticed now that you've come to college in addition to the ones that we just talked about? Also, why is it important to pay attention to those differences?